Okay, so it's been a hot minute since I've done anything Call of Duty related. Last thing I did for Call of Duty was my review of Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And that left such a shit taste in my mouth that I kind of went off of Call of Duty for a while. I mean, I just had such a bad experience with that game's campaign. It's one of the worst campaigns I've ever had to suffer through. And to this day, it still bewilders me hearing people on YouTube and online saying like Call of Duty Black Ops 2 was the greatest Call of Duty campaign ever made. Those people are mentally challenged. Yeah, you can watch my review. I'll put in the link down below. It's an older video, so the audio quality's not the best, video quality's not the best, but it's still relevant, and I still stand by most of what I said in that review. It is one of the worst Call of Duties I've ever played. So I decided to kind of get back in Call of Duty, and the neat thing about Call of Duty is you don't have to do it chronologically from when it first came out. You can kind of jump in at different points. And one great point you can jump in is the remake of the Modern Warfare trilogy, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019. It's just Call of Duty Modern Warfare, but because they go with that retro, like, minimalist name approach, you have to throw in the year so you don't confuse the hell out of people, because if you just say Call of Duty Modern Warfare, they'll think, which one? The 2007 one, the 2009 one, the 2011 one? And so you have to throw in the year date now. But so yeah, I jumped in on that one, and I have to say, a far, far, far better experience than Black Ops 2. Which admittedly is saying absolutely nothing, because Black Ops 2 was really, really terrible. But no, I actually had fun with this game, unlike Black Ops 2. So let's get into it.
Alcatraz down there. Yeah, put us on the roof. But we have to reach Echo fast. We've got a lot of hell headed down there. RPG!
Okay, so for starters, whatever your system you're looking for getting this on, do yourself a favor and do not get this for the PlayStation 5. You get for Xbox One, PC, you get for Xbox Series X, you get for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro, but whatever you do, do not get this for PlayStation 5, because it is almost unplayable. With horrendous frame rates and skipping, bugs, slowdown, files just automatically deleting themselves regardless of how many times you try and reinstall them, and even a system bug that you cannot remove from your system unless you do a hard factory reset on your console. I have a video going over all this, the different hoops you can go through if you manage to try and play this on PlayStation 5. But just if you don't have this copy on PS4 and you like are looking at which version to get, do not get this game for PS5, because Activision never fixed it. They didn't care. They're the type of company, once they get something out, it's like, okay, yeah, screw anyone who's invested. We're working on the next project now. And so, regardless that there's a Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and people on PS5 might want to, you know, play the first chapter before playing that one, Activision and Infinity Ward were kind of like, yeah, no, go fuck yourself, PS5 owners. That's how they were. And so it's kind of insulting that they never fixed it. And yeah, I would just say try not to play this on PS5, if at all humanly possible. Can you play it on PS5 if you want to? Sure, but you're not going to have a good time. Now, another thing I want to point out, and this started with Call of Duty World War II, But Call of Duty games, now for the past couple years since then, including this one, they have nothing on the disc. You might get one map, one little training mode, and like 2 weapons, and that's it. That's all that's on the fucking disc. Everything else, the single player campaign that you can play offline, isn't put on this disc. You have to download it, which is so fucking irritating and stupid. I cannot stress that. Like, because of how obnoxious that is, I always reduce a point from Call of Duty whenever they do shit like that. Okay? If you don't, at the very least, put the campaign on the disc, I'm sorry, you're losing a point. Okay? It's so infuriating, especially for someone who has spotty internet. It's like you sit down, it's like, cool, I finally got Call of Duty. It's like, nope, you don't have Call of Duty. You need to get a 40 gig single player campaign pack, and that multiplayer that you want to play offline, you have to get another 20 gig pack for that. They have them in packs, which is so stupid. There's like campaign pack 1, and then there's campaign pack 2 and Spec Ops pack 1 in the same thing, and it's just so ridiculous. And then you have to do an 80 gig update, so you're like getting like 160 gig download. If you have limited internet or a download allowance, do not bother getting this game, because you need to commit a shit ton of data to downloading before you can even play this game. So now, going over all that, let's say internet's not an issue for you, and you don't have this on PS5, and you don't care that there's nothing on the physical disc, and you get into the game. How is the game? Well, this game is insanely beautiful. Like, really freaking gorgeous, especially during some of the nighttime scenes with lighting and shadows. Holy shit, this thing is impressive. Now, granted, I am playing this on Xbox Series X, so I'm getting like the Xbox One version of this, running at like 4K, but it's still impressive. I have to admit, this thing is a looker. And definitely some of the cutscenes, like some of the facial models and lip syncing, it's almost photorealistic. This leads into the other really cool thing about this campaign is the cinematics are really, really solid, including like camera angles and direction. Like, this thing feels like a movie. Correction, this thing feels like a AAA summer blockbuster auteur filmed this type of movie with really creative camera transitions and angles and whatnot. Like, this thing feels like Steven Spielberg got together with Michael Bay and went, hey, let's try and make like the most cinematically gorgeous military action film ever made. And it's like, yeah. So, like, this could be the perfect story to adapt into a movie adaptation whenever they eventually get around to making a Call of Duty movie. I'm surprised they haven't made one yet, since it's like a $200 billion franchise or whatever you want to say it is. I mean, it's a very profitable franchise. It's one of the highest selling franchises ever. I think it's about time before they make it into a movie. And like, this would be a pretty good story to adapt into a movie because it's already so insanely cinematic. And for the most part, a lot of the voice acting is really solid, especially with Gaz and Price. Like, those two guys, especially with some of the scenes where they're talking to each other, it's like, damn, like, that is a fucking Oscar moment right there. Those guys really nailed the landing with some of the lines and deliveries. Now, I will admit, a couple of the lines do not land properly. There's a couple of really lame-ass lines in here that just kind of make it go, ooh. Like, you guys want to try that again? Because That was really fucking cringy. Now, in terms of the missions, Call of Duty 2019 has some of the most inventive missions I've seen in a long time. Like, they are really unique. I didn't feel a lot of repeating missions from previous Call of Duty games, which is impressive. Because how many Call of Duties are there now? What, like 20? I mean, there are a lot of Call of Duties out there. So I'm impressed that they managed to come up with new creative missions that we haven't really seen before. Like, we saw a mission that basically replicated the Bin Laden raid. I mean, the way the buildings, like, it just looks exactly like the Bin Laden raid. They do change it up a little bit. And then there's the clean house mission, which, like, everyone universally agrees is a very creative and interesting mission. And it's one of the more grittier aspects of the game that actually sticks the landing on the gritty, hyper-realistic violent aspect. I'll get more on that later. And then, of course, like, one of my favorite missions is the 13 Hours inspired mission, the Embassy, which basically, they were just inspired by the movie 13 Hours, or the event 13 Hours. Good book, by the way. I'd recommend you read it. But, like, that was a really enjoyable mission. Like, honestly, playing through it again, there was only, like, a handful of missions that I could have done without. And, like, 98% of the other missions were really awesome and creative. I liked them a lot. I also love mounting. That came out wrong. I love the mechanic of mounting your gun against the wall when you're firing. It makes it more stable and gives you a little bit more cover so that you can kind of peer around and there's less of a chance of you getting hit and you can take a couple pot shots off enemies. I really like that feature, and I like to see it in more Call of Duty games in the future. Now, in terms of the story, I will say I never had a moment where they did like a surprise where they were trying to like shake you to your core like they were pathetically trying to do in Black Ops 2, where they want you to go I never had that reaction in this, but I will admit there is kind of a pretty decent surprise in this. Nothing like deep gasping, oh my gosh, my life's been changed forever. No, it's like, oh, that's interesting. I did not see that coming. Okay, let's see where this goes. Like, that kind of surprise. I wouldn't say it's, like, shocking, earth-shattering, but, no, pretty decent surprise partway through that I didn't see coming. I didn't feel like they teased it too much. I couldn't see it coming from 75 miles away like I could in Black Ops 2. And so, yeah, I liked that. I would rather have a decent surprise than a poorly executed, earth-shattering surprise that will shake you to your core. Now, another thing I have to kind of criticize is the Russians. They're half-baked. They're not that creative, and like it just kind of feels like they're thrown in for the sake of being thrown in, because it's like, okay, what do the Russians want? To invade. Like, do they want land? We don't really establish that. Okay. They've been invading this country for how long? 20 years. And like they're able to afford this war? Like, yep. And they've committed numerous atrocious war crimes. And like they successfully buried it? No, they do it out in the open. And they're still around because the writers kind of didn't give a rat's ass about that aspect of the story. It's like they went out of their way to make the Russians the most evil, horrific, monstrous pieces of shit you could possibly imagine, and it's like, you know, like, I get you need a bad guy, but, I mean, come on, like, this is supposed to be, like, this is a gritty, gray area type of game, and the more you get into it, the more, like, black and white this game becomes. And it's like, I was kind of given the impression this was going to be like a very gray, opaque, like you don't know who's a good guy in this, you don't know who a bad guy is in this, and it's like, yeah, no, it's very clear who the bad guys are, and very clear who the good guys are. And to continue on a point from earlier, for a game trying to be edgy and gritty and, you know, constantly warning me that before you play this campaign, be warned, there's material in here that's not suitable for everyone. Do you understand? You have to click I understand. Like, they're doing that no Russian, like, warning from the original Modern Warfare 2. And, like, the most gritty, edgy thing was probably the clean house mission, which honestly was not that gritty and edgy. Yeah, it's kind of surprising that you could shoot a woman if she picks up a gun to fire at you, and you have to shoot around hostages. But the problem is, if you hit one of the hostages, it's like a game over. And so it's like, if you had the where I actually could hit him, and there were consequences, that would have been more interesting. But like, case in point, this game's trying to be edgy and gritty. And there's a level where a character you're playing as gets interrogated, and the most horrific thing they do to them is waterboarding. Which, if you watch CNN and, you know, mainstream media, that'll be the most terrifying way of interrogation you could possibly imagine. Go talk to an actual veteran or soldier or someone who's actually been in combat and ask them what some of the things they've heard in ways of interrogation are possible. It will disturb you what is out there. Like, after talking with some of these guys, it's like, oh yeah, waterboarding's nothing. Like, if the enemy said they were going to waterboard us, we'd be like, fine. Because some of the horrendous shit that is actually out there, I cannot mention on here because I'll get removed off YouTube. Like, waterboarding is the mild hot sauce of the Taco Bell hot sauces. It is very mild, and this game is trying to act like, oh my gosh, this character's getting waterboarded. Oh my gosh, they may not make it. It's like, yeah, no, they're fine. After some of the shit I've been told happens to prisoners in wartime scenarios, yeah, they are perfectly fine. So this game wants to be edgy and gritty, but so much of the time, it's fucking not. Now let's get on to another aspect of the game that I had issues with. Fara. Now, I like Fara. I like her as a character. She's better than most strong female characters that we've seen in the past couple of years. Like, case in point, she's not perfect at everything, and also she doesn't treat every guy around her like complete dog shit, so that automatically makes her very likable. And I also love the banter between her and Alex. Like, they have this really great chemistry with each other. Like, I'd love to see more done with those two characters in the long run. But here's the problem with Fara. Her leadership status is complete fucking bullshit. Like, seriously, I feel like the people who wrote this game do not read current events or history or just, you know, read anything involving real life. Because a fortunate fact that some people will probably argue this on, but all you have to do is crack open a book and you'll see that the Middle East, like 99% of the time, is insanely sexist against women. Like, insanely sexist. In certain Middle Eastern countries, women cannot attend school. They're not allowed to show their face in public. They're not allowed to drive. They're not allowed to have a job. They're not allowed to have any kind of property. They're not allowed to vote or have any kind of rights. Like, honestly, there's some Middle Eastern countries, women had more rights during the English Dark Ages than they do in modern-day Middle Eastern countries. And you mean to tell me that a Muslim woman is the leader of the entire resistance in a country fighting against the Russians? So when are you going back to the Institute? Because you're clearly insane. And yeah, I know some people might try to go, well, it's a fictitious country. They couldn't be more progressive than the actual country. Okay, there's not one single fucking line in this game that says, oh yeah, this country's far more progressive than other Middle Eastern countries. Which honestly would have at least helped. But no, it's just, oh, she's so amazing that she's the leader of all of the resistance in the most sexist region in the world. It's like, yeah, bullshit. I call complete bullshit on that. And like, it would have made so much more sense if her older brother was the head of the entire resistance, because certain events that happen later on in the game, and I don't want to spoil, it kind of makes her come off as an imbecile leader that should have known what was going on. Like, seriously, all of this would have been fixed if she was just like a really well-trained lieutenant under her brother, and, you know, you still would have gotten the same interaction with her with Alex and, you know, Price's team, and she still would have been just as prominent of a character as ever, but it would have been a little bit more realistic that her brother was the head of the entire resistance. But the fact that she's the head of the entire resistance in a Muslim country is so fucking unbelievable. It is like, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare is more believable than that, okay? And that took place in space. Now, again, I like Fara. I thought she had some really great moments. But no, that just kept tearing me out of the experience. And speaking of Fara, the game puts an odd focus on her backstories with 2 missions entirely dedicated to her past. And yet the game does not feel like her story. She does not feel like the main character. Price and Gaz and Alex, those guys feel like the main character. Especially Price, even though you never play as Price. But, like, Fara feels like a supporting character in this story. And even, like, the end, like, the final moments of the game, you play as her, and she kind of finishes the game. But even then, like, it feels like at the last minute, the writer's side, hey, we need to try and make this Fara story, but it's, like, been really focusing on Price the entire time. Yeah, well, we still gotta try and make this feel like Fara's story. And it's like, I'm not saying you couldn't have a Call of Duty entirely focused on a female character, but, like, come on, a little bit of consistency. Like, have it the entire thing focus on her, or at least make her very prominent. But, like, she never felt as prominent as the writers wanted her to feel, like Price, or the whole thing with them trying to find the chlorine gas. Now, moving to other modes, there's a kind of continuation of the campaign called Co-op, Spec Ops. It's kind of like both in the same option. And co-op, unfortunately, is online only. But I did get to play a good chunk of it, and yeah, it's a lot of fun when you're playing with friends. Especially when you find, like, those perfect places to, like, farm XP off of troops so you can level up your weapons faster. Like, the bank vault is, like, a perfect... Like, you got 3 guys set up in that bank vault. You just each take turns, like, picking them off. Eventually, like, the game stopped giving us XP because we farmed way too much. But no, the co-op missions are a lot of fun, especially when you have teammates working together, and so that's pretty cool. Another surprise to me is the offline multiplayer features. Basically, with this game fully upgraded with the updates and whatnot, you can play every single map offline, not the huge giant conquest map modes, but like the individual multiplayer maps. You can play every single one of those offline. There's like 50 maps. There's a lot. And you can also play with every gun unlocked and every piece of attachment unlocked as well. Now, some people are thinking, well, doesn't that negate the purpose of the leveling system for online multiplayer and playing online multiplayer? Well, no, because, come on, online multiplayer is going to be infinitely more challenging and exhilarating than offline multiplayer against bots. That's hands down. And plus, there's a couple more modes available online only than there are offline. But here's the thing that's really awesome about the offline multiplayer aspect. One, you can familiarize yourself with every map before you jump in the deep end, with everyone playing with cheats enabled and everyone who has the maps memorized like the back of their hand. If you're getting into Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019 for the first time, this offline mode is a must because it allows you to get familiar with the maps first. And then you can also change the difficulty of the bots. So you can work your way up to having the bots veteran from recruit. And so by the time you're getting to the veteran mode, then you'll be ready to go for the online multiplayer. And the fact that all the guns and attachments are unlocked is also really clever, because with let's say a standard gun, let's say this is locked and you have to get, like 75 headshots with a certain gun to unlock this gun. Well, that's all great, but how do I know if I'm going to enjoy that gun? Well, you could go off to the offline multiplayer, play around with it. It was like, oh wow, this thing's awesome. Okay, 75 headshots coming up. And so that's why that's so awesome. And like, there's some weapons when I was playing online co-op, it's like, if I get 10 like headshots with this gun, I can unlock that. And so I went in offline mode, played around with it. It's like, I wasn't particularly fond of that gun, so I didn't have to waste all my time on getting that specific quota to unlock that gun or piece of equipment or whatnot. And so, like, the amount they offer for offline multiplayer is really awesome. And basically, you could spend months playing this game. Also, I think my favorite mode is Cyber Hack mode, because basically it's just two teams trying to get an EMP device to one location, so it condenses like the grouping much more closer. And I'm not fond of team deathmatch where it's just like an enemy can hit you from any moment, anywhere, at any point. But with like the cyber mode, it kind of brings everyone closer together so that it feels a little bit more Battlefield like, and not just, every man for himself, even with team deathmatch. Gunsmith is also amazing. Basically, you can have almost an unlimited variation of different types of guns in Gunsmith mode. You can have up to 5 attachments, which is so satisfying after the decade of only able to have like 2 attachments on a gun. Now, I'm not saying this is the first game to do it, but like there was a long period of time you could only have 2 attachments on a gun, and it fucking sucked. And now you can have 5 attachments on a gun, which is really awesome. I love that. It is so satisfying. I just wish there was like a Gunsmith mode for the single player campaigns. That would have been perfect. That would have pushed this game over the top. And then this has probably some of the most enjoyable kill streaks in the series. Like, you have like so many different types of like aerial support in this, from attack helicopters to helicopters with guns on them, to gunships, to white phosphorus. I know that was kind of controversial to have this in this game, but yeah, no, white phosphorus gets your attention when someone drops it. Like, you want to make sure you're not dropping it at your guys, because it does not discriminate. It's just like anything in that area is dead. It's just so overall, I really enjoyed this game. Did it have its problems? Sure. It's not perfect, but it's one of the more entertaining Call of Duties I've played in recent years. It's a lot of fun. I'm glad that I own this copy. I'm going to keep this copy. I had so much fun with this Call of Duty. I would say, yeah, if it wasn't for some of the smaller issues with like the way they have the disc set up and the fact that they're not supporting PS5, and some of the story elements didn't quite work with me, but for the most part the story was great. I love the gameplay. I love the gun mechanics. I love the multiplayer. I love the campaign missions. Like, this is a keeper, and for that I'm going to rate this. This was a lot of fun. I had a blast with this game, and quite frankly, I think this is a must-buy, hands down. So that's been my review of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019. My name's Chris Recall with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all for today.